time for another segment of Q&A, where we here dissect the comments from you, the members, to assess their stupidity and embarrass you into exile.
Edogz is back for round 2, and when I tell you guys that this guy is an Al Heyman, PBC, TMT sycophant,
cheerleader,
that's really an understatement. You have to have actually spoken to this guy, dealt with this guy, read his delusional comments to really witness how much he's willing to excuse whenever it's a PBC fighter, whenever it's a TMT fighter. You gotta read the amount of bullshit that he's really willing to peddle to defend these guys, because he thinks PBC fighters hail the moon and the stars, and he thinks that boxing is all about PBC fighters.
he does.
He says, bias, you said Al Heyman Showtime doesn't have 50 million. Wilder won't fight Fury, even though it's official. Pause. Let's hold the bullshit right there. I said, that $50 million offer was never confirmed. And if you look at Shelly Finkel's side of the argument and Eddie Hearn's side of the argument, both of them are saying the same thing, and the only real difference is, who do you want to blame for it? That's what I said, and I covered that extensively, so it's very intellectually dishonest to try to restructure what I said to suit your bullshit argument. Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua, both of those guys already said that they never saw the money.
Okay.
Give it to me, and we'll sign the flight. I didn't see no $50 million. My bank account is still the same, it ain't changed. So I'm looking for that money.
But you said if they give you 50 million, you would sign tomorrow.
But where is it?
I mean, so you didn't see the proof of funds?
No, bro.
Deontay said he was emailing you.
Yeah, I speak to him.
So you don't believe that it was true?
But all I'm saying is I just didn't see the 50 million. That's what he asked me, and that's what I said.
Now, Shelly Finkel said that he spoke to Anthony Joshua directly and that the funds would be put into an account.
Joshua personally asked for all the details of the deal, and we sent it to him. And that we told him when it would be. It would be New York or Vegas. It would be November or December in the U.S. The money would be put into a fund so that he knew it was there. The money would be put into a fund so that he knew it was there. The money would be put into a fund so that he knew it was there.
Meaning they weren't put into an account already. Meaning those funds weren't in escrow already. And if the funds aren't in escrow already, then you can't verify them. And these negotiations, they never really start. So don't try to paraphrase or spin or restructure what I said. What I said was very clear, concise, and to the point. They never confirmed that they had 50 million. And to date, they still haven't. You don't know that. You're just taking it on faith because you believe everything that Team Wilder says. Whatever comes from Team Wilder's side is the fucking gospel to your dumbass. I mean, take a second to think about this. Deontay Wilder said that the reason that he didn't sign the contract to fight Anthony Joshua after he agreed to the 15 million, after he agreed to fight in the UK, he said the reason that he didn't sign the contract was because there was no date and no venue, and also he wants a rematch clause too. But he stressed that there's no date and no venue.
People talking about signing a contract. I am not finna sign a blind contract. I am not finna sign a contract that don't have a date, that don't have a venue. This will be a 50-50 fight.
Yet here he is agreeing to fight Tyson Fury, and they haven't finalized a date or a venue yet. The date and the venue weren't finalized, and it's for that reason that Wilder says he wasn't going to sign that contract. He wasn't going to agree to that. Yet here he is agreeing to Tyson Fury, and the date and the venue have not yet been finalized. Don't expect Edogz's hypocritical ass to make light of any of this, because it's not his goal to tell the truth or call it down the middle. What he really wants is to blow smoke up everybody's ass and talk up every single PBC and TMT fighter and leave things out of the argument. He ain't gonna make light of the fact that Wilder didn't want to sign a contract because the date and the venue hadn't been booked yet. Well, the date and the venue for the Tyson Fury fight hasn't been booked yet, but supposedly you're fighting him, right? How come you could agree to that shit when it's Fury, but you wouldn't agree to it when it was Joshua? Could it have something to do with the fact that these guys are saying that the split for this supposed fight is a 50-50 split, whereas with Anthony Joshua, you had no say in the matter. You weren't going to get a 50-50 split. You weren't going to get a percentage. You were going to get a flat 15. And at that time, that was actually a reasonable offer for Wilder because, well, his net worth is 16 million. But Wilder didn't like that, and Shelly Finkel didn't like that. So they're going to stall. They're going to hold out. They're going to say whatever they got to say to make it seem like it's Anthony Joshua that doesn't want to fight, and it's Joshua that's stalling when really they're the ones that are stalling. They're stalling because they want a better offer. They want more money. So where Deontay Wilder wasn't willing to sign a contract because the date and the venue weren't finalized, he's more than willing to sign a contract to fight Tyson Fury without a date and venue finalized, and you know why?
Why?
Because supposedly the split is right down the middle. 50-50. Not a flat 15, it's an even split. And that's what Wilder's wanted all along. Essentially, this is what I've been saying. Deontay Wilder and his team are holding up the Joshua fight because they want a better offer. They want more money. Now let's further expose this fucking hypocrite. Let's further expose this sycophant trying to peddle his bullshit and his agenda on this channel, which he often frequents, and I don't know why, because he knows that this is gonna get him put in the hot seat. He says Crawford is another one that isn't trying to face Spence.
Really?
Say what you want. If Crawford sent a fair deal over to Spence, you know Spence would jump on it like a hobo jumps on a freshly dropped hot dog.
Really?
When competition looks easy, no problem unifying. When it's stiff, like Spence and Wilder, then there are all sorts of problems. Now peep this shit. What did Errol Spence say to Terrence Crawford when Terrence Crawford talked about fighting him before he moved up to 147? What did Spence say to Crawford? He told that guy, get a belt. Get Jeff Horn's belt first, and then we can fight in the future. Get a belt before you start worrying about me or Keith Thurman. That's what Errol Spence said. Now Crawford got that belt. He beat Jeff Horn and he beat him soundly. And what did Errol Spence say after that? On June 9th, Terrence Crawford climbs to the welterweight division, defeats Jeff Horn, takes his belt. On June 9th. On June 15th, Errol Spence is quoted as saying, well, I need 3 belts. I need 3 belts. Once I unify 3 titles, then I'll go see Terrence Crawford.
What?
So the story has gone from Terrence Crawford needs to get a belt to I need to get 3 belts and then I'll go see him.
The fuck?
Bear in mind that Terrence Crawford is probably only one of 2 guys that are calling out Errol Spence. In a division where nobody seems to really be in a hurry to fight Spence, one of the only guys that does is the guy who he's telling, well, I gotta unify 3 titles first. I've gotta clean up my side of the street first. I have to beat all Al Heyman's welterweights, and then I'll fight you. So who's really putting distance between himself and the other guy? Is it Crawford, or is it Spence? Because even now, the boxing media is peddling out stories where Terrence Crawford is saying he doesn't see any obstacles in facing PBC fighters. He don't see a problem with that situation. He was quoted as saying, I know my promoter is willing to work with any other promoter out there, so I can't use that as an excuse, so I don't know why they use that as an excuse, or if that is an excuse. It's business at the end of the day. It's gotta make sense, and when it does make sense, that is when it will happen. But we see enthusiasm from one guy, and we don't see that same enthusiasm from Errol Spence. Errol Spence, who's had a pretty hard time securing opponents. Yet here you have an opponent that wants you as much as you've wanted other fighters, yet you're the one putting distance between yourself and him. Oh, you can lick your chops at the prospect of facing Mikey Garcia, but when it's Crawford, you need to unify 3 titles first? When it's Crawford, you need 3 belts and you need to beat all of Al Heyman's welterweights. You're all for a Mikey Garcia fight, but it's all this added bullshit when it becomes about Terrence Crawford. Am I understanding this? Now, once again, Edogz is not going to make light of this. Edogz is not going to highlight this inconsistency. And you know why?
No, I don't.
Because, well, Errol Spence is a PBC fighter, whereas Terrence Crawford is a top-ranked fighter. And it just so happens that Edogz has a vendetta against Top Rank. As a matter of fact, he seems to have a vendetta against any fighter that isn't a PBC fighter. He doesn't like Gennady Golovkin, he doesn't like Vasyl Lomachenko, he thinks Terrence Crawford is bullshitting and he needs to make Spence an offer. Do you notice how all these PBC sycophants are beggars?
They are.
They're all beggars.
They are.
They're all waiting for someone to make their guy an offer. Why the fuck can't your fucking guys make an offer? If these fucking guys are everything you make them out to be, how come they're never the ones that are making the fucking offers? He's actually willing to downplay the last American undisputed champion in any weight class. He's actually willing to downgrade Terrence Crawford for the simple fact that he's not a PBC fighter and he's a top-ranked fighter. That's how much of a fucking shill this guy is. I sincerely hope Al Heyman is cutting him a check, because if not, he's just a cheerleader without a cause. If Crawford sent a fair offer to Spence, why the fuck does Crawford have to send the offer? Why are you always waiting for Bob Arum to make it happen? This is the same shit you did with Rigo and Loma. You bitched and moaned and cried, and Bob Arum finally makes the fight possible, and what do? You bitch and moan and cry. I mean, for a guy who hates Top Rank as much as this guy does, for a guy who hates that organization as much as he does, he sure expects them to make things happen an awful lot. He doesn't expect Bo fucking Diddley from Al Heyman, the PBC, or TMT. He doesn't expect those guys to do Bo fucking Diddley. It's always the other guys that have got to make it happen. And until they do, he'll denigrate any fighter that isn't a PBC fighter, even if it's a guy as accomplished as Terrence Crawford. He'll go as far as saying that Crawford isn't trying to fight Spence, even though reports show otherwise. I mean, any evidence that is available on the situation, it shows otherwise. It shows that Crawford has Spence in his crosshairs, and it's Spence that's putting distance between them, for one reason or another. But like all PBC shows, he's gonna run off beliefs. He's gonna run off of what he believes, even though all the evidence is to the contrary. He's gonna downgrade any fighter that's opposite the PBC fighter, because for some fucking reason he insists on holding that company's dick firmly in his fucking hand. And whenever they're involved in a situation, they're right and the other guys are wrong, no matter how it breaks down. He doesn't care. He's always going to talk up the PBC fighter.
Always.
Pay attention to this. He says, from what I've seen, AJ did more to avoid a fight with Wilder than Tank did to avoid Loma. And that's why AJ deserves equal criticism, or at least some critique instead of pom-pom waving.
You're supposed to be calling it down the middle. If you were, both AJ and Tank would be mentioned together in full ducking. Except Tank isn't ducking Loma anymore, while AJ is still ducking Wilder.
Do you notice how defensive Edogz gets when it comes to Gervonta Davis? A guy who most of us agree ducked Vasyl Lomachenko, that you had every opportunity to fight him. You had every opportunity to make that fight a reality. But we saw in the media, from Gervonta Davis and his promoter's own mouth, that they ain't in any hurry to have that fight. To the point where Vasyl Lomachenko, well, he done left the division. The opportunity for that done came and went. This don't bother Edogz at all. And you know why it doesn't bother him? Because he never wanted Gervonta Davis to fight Vasyl Lomachenko. He's one of these guys that is critical of every other fighter, of every other champion. But he wants you to cut Gervonta Davis some slack because of what exactly? You're all for unifications when it's Anthony Joshua and Wilder, but you're not for unifications when it was Gervonta Davis and Vasyl Lomachenko. Am I understanding this? You're saying that Anthony Joshua avoided Wilder by sending him not one contract, but two. A contract that is still active today. That's ducking. But Gervonta Davis saying, I want to fight someone who draws better, and subsequently fighting Fonseca. Oh, no, that's not ducking. Look, this is what I'm going to tell you about this guy. This guy's full of shit. He represents the bullshit, the crap, the kind of crap that is bad for boxing, the kind of fighters that are bad for boxing, like Gervonta Davis, the kind of protected hype jobs that are little more than a shiny spoon you can wave in front of an idiot, like Edogz, and he'll go up to bat for them. And why? It won't be because they're so accomplished or because they're such a good fighter. It won't be because of any of that. It'll be because of two reasons: nationalism and tribalism, because that's all he sees. He's only going up to bat for Gervonta Davis because he happens to be the American fighter in the situation, and he also happens to be the PBC fighter in the situation. Don't expect Edogz to ever be on the side of a top-ranked fighter. That's just not going to happen.
Hell no.
Edogz is willing to defend all manner of self-entitled crybaby bullshit, as long as it's coming from a PBC fighter. These guys can openly contradict themselves right in front of him, and he will say nothing. He will make no light of it. They can avoid the best fighters in their division. They can stall mega fights like Joshua versus Wilder. They can do whatever they want, devoid of judgment, devoid of criticism from Edogz. The same kind of criticisms that he seems to have for everyone else. It's okay for Gervonta Davis to avoid Vasyl Lomachenko, just like it's okay for Deontay Wilder to turn down a career-high payday. And what's his anchor for his argument? A fictitious $50 million offer that was never even confirmed on either side. To him, all of this is okay, and I'll say this much. I don't give a fuck that this guy has some kind of, affinity for the PBC. I don't care about his love affair with that organization. I could care less. But you come here, and you try to peddle that bullshit to me and wave a finger in my face and say that I'm being biased, let me put you in your fucking place right now. Let me put you in your fucking place for trying to wave your fucking finger in my fucking face and tell me that I'm biased with all the bullshit that you're willing to endorse just because it's Al Heyman's bullshit and his fighters' bullshit. Let me put you in your place.
Weak people identify with weak shit. This is a well-known fact that those who you identify with seem to be the scum of boxing. The weak, the meager, the beggars, who do not have the strength of arms to garner the success that others do on their own steam. Thus, they must gravitate towards these winners, these champions, to achieve any level of relevance. That you, Edogz, identify with bullshit because you are a bullshitter and you expose that when you go up to bat for this scum.
If I'm as biased as Edogz says, then why would he continually come here? If I'm so biased and I'm waving pom-poms, if I'm not telling the truth, then why would this guy continually come here? I'll tell you why he comes here. Because I am telling the truth. I am calling it down the middle. I don't cater to any particular fighter. The same fighter that I defend today might be the same fighter that I've got to put in a harsh light tomorrow. And he knows that. He knows that I'll call it down the middle where he won't. Because he's got a PBC hand so far up his fucking ass you can see its ring fingers coming out of his nose. I'm telling the truth. And the truth offends no one more than a guy who's in denial. A guy like Edogz, who wants to believe that, well, you know, the PBC fighters are in the right. No, they're not. No, they're not. Gervonta Davis ducked Vasyl Lomachenko, and he doesn't seem to want to fight anybody that's halfway good in his own weight class. In turn, self-entitled Wilder and all his demands and bullshit are the reason that he couldn't finalize the Joshua fight. Joshua didn't make it hard on you. You made it hard on them. These guys have dealt with other champions and bigger marquee fighters than you, and they didn't face any of the friction that you're giving them. They made a fight with everyone from Charles Martin to Joseph Parker to Vladimir Klitschko, a guy who's a bigger name than you are and always has been. And they didn't go through any friction with these guys. Only with you did problems arise. And that's because Wilder's the self-entitled cunt. Wilder's the self-entitled idiot that doesn't want to acquiesce to simply being the B-side. That if you believe that you can beat him, sign the dotted line and you'll get your shot. But you don't want to do that because we all know your guys aren't sure that you can win that fight, so before they put you in that situation, they want assurances that they're gonna get their money's worth. Intelligent people like me can see that and call it for what it is.
Dick ride.
A fucking stall tactic from a self-entitled idiot.